Now you know how to create frames and how to create shapes. Before we continue our journey with the Figma fundamentals, I want to tell you about one specific thing about one Figma Pro secrets called nudge amount. What is that and where do you need it? So if you are designing mobile applications or websites, you probably heard about 8 points grid or 4-point grid. Yeah, we're using usually a 4-point grid when we are designing mobile applications, and we are using, lots of people are using 8-point grid when they're designing websites. And today I'll show you how to actually to make your work a little bit more efficient when you're designing mobile applications or websites, when you are specifically following 8-point grid or 4-point grid. How to do that? And what is nudge in general? Well, if you are creating anything in Figma, usually let's create a rectangle. So we just created a rectangle of this size. And now, if I press arrow right, then it will move only just by 1 pixel. In this case, 1 point. As you can see, I'm pressing arrow and it changes its amount only by 1 point. If I hold shift and press arrow right, then we will jump through 10 points. As you can see it here, X position, the same with Y. While I'm holding shift, in this case, the jump will be 10 points. But what if I'm using 8-point grid or 4-point grid? I don't want to jump, 10 points right and then 2 times left to get back to 8 points. Or when we are creating anything for 4-point grid, if I need to move only like on 4 pixels, I have to press 4 times arrow right, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I moved my element by 4 points to the right. Or if I need to move like 16, in this case it will be 1, 2, and back 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not convenient and it's not efficient. You become a, what people call pixel mover. How to make your process more efficient? Well, my recommendation for you, and this is a Figma Pro tip lots of people don't know how to use. Go here, Figma, Preferences, and here at the bottom you will find nudge amount. Click on nudge amount, and here you will see small nudge is 1 point, big nudge is 10 points. And here you can change it to the amount that you want. If you are designing mobile applications specifically, my recommendation is for you, and if you are following 4-point grid, switch it to 4. In this case, every single time when you are pressing shift and arrow, your element will jump only by 4 points. And this is super convenient. You can change it to 8, for example, and then back and forth 4 times. But let's go with this one. Just an example. Small nudge, 1 point, big nudge, 4 points. Enter, that's it, closed. Now, this is my element, which is exactly divisible by 4. So basically, if I create an element, let's imagine like 20 by 20, then it will be here. And now when I press shift and arrow right, I jump by 4 points. This is super convenient, especially if you are building a particular block, a particular spacing system, and if you want to follow it. Incredible way to create elements. If you are experienced designer, if you're designing for just only mobile applications and you want to be even more efficient, in this case I can recommend you for mobile applications to go to Preferences, nudge amount, and change small nudge to 4 and big nudge to 8. In this case, it will be much easier for you. Once you press arrow right, you jump by 4 points, but if you hold shift, it will be 8 points. Because sometimes when you have to set, for example, the spacing between elements 4 points here, if you want it to be, let's imagine 40 between these two elements, in this case, you can press just multiple times down, like this one, or it will be much faster if you press shift 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now you know exactly that the distance between these two elements is 40. This is when it comes to 4-point grid. When it comes to 8-point grid, the same. You just go here, preferences, nudge amount, small nudge set to 1, big nudge set to 8, and that's it. So now, when we have any element here, when I press just only one arrow, like right or left, we'll change our position only by 1 point. But if I press shift, the position will change by 8 points. You can see it here in the X position or Y position. But also you see that I created this dotted paper style grid here, so you can see how we're jumping from here from one position to another position. And for the 10-point grid, or like a default state, you can go to preferences, nudge amount, just don't change anything here, small nudge 1, big nudge 10, and that's it. So now when you're creating element, let's remember like 100 by 100% points. So now when I press shift and arrow right, I'm jumping by 10 points. What grid to use, it depends on your project, it depends on what you're working on, it depends on the company you're working at, it depends on the team you're working at, because some companies, some teams using a specific grid. From my experience, after, again, huge amount of projects, my recommendation for mobile grid, for mobile apps, to use 4-point grid. For websites and almost everything else, to use the amount that you want to use, I use 10-point grid. Because I remember when I was in the middle of my journey as a designer, as a UX UI designer, I remember someone told that you have to use 8-point grid. You have to use 8-point grid. And I started learning about that, and I realized that 8-point grid is was used in print, so that's why everyone started using it on desktop as well. And also because the resolution, to have a pixel perfect picture, it's better to have something that is divisible by 4. And I was following this rule for a real long period of time because I didn't understand. I wasn't experienced enough, and I didn't understand what this grid is used for, how to use it. So that's why I just followed what people told me to use. But then, with more experience, I understood more about grids. I even created the masterclass specifically for layouts and grids and how to use them. And I realized that, honestly, you have to use the grid based on the content that you're using, and also the grid that allows you to accomplish your task, accomplish the project that you're working on. And in most of the cases, the best grid is the one that gives you the best flexibility. And in my case, it was 10-point grid. Today we have phones, we have screens with a resolution that give you just crispy, pixel perfect image anyway. It shouldn't be divisible by 4 like it was back in the past. So that's why my recommendation to you, just follow what works best for you. In my case, for mobile apps, it's usually 4-point grid, and for desktop, I use 10-point grid. I used 8-point grid when I wasn't experienced enough. Today, I'm using 10-point grid because it's just more convenient for me. If it's more convenient for you to use 8-point grid, just use that one. How to create grids? I'll tell you in the next lesson. For now, just remember that you can go here, Figma, main menu, preferences, nudge amount, and you can change it to the size that you want. Super convenient feature, and I'll see you in the next lesson where I'll show you how to create grids, because we'll be using grids in lots of projects when we will be designing something like icons, when we'll be creating some graphic design projects, and also mobile apps, and of course websites. So see you in the next lesson where I'll show you how to create grids.